Okay, let's talk about partial zero emission vehicles. You got that? Partial zero emission vehicles. All right, you gotta have a zero gasoline evaporative emissions. Eliminates evaporative emissions from vehicle fuel system. Improvements require upgrading and so on and so forth. All right, so let's don't get into that too deep. Engine systems. We're talking about engines right here. Cylinder bore and piston tolerances. You see that? You understand where the cylinder bore is, right?
Yep.
Where is that? What's the number?
Number 2.
Mm-hmm. What's number 1?
Looks like one of those little
engine
things on the block that has the coolant come through it.
All right, look at this, what we got here. Cylinder bore, piston finish, taper and roundness tolerances are revised. They improve and increase the longevity of the piston ring to cylinder wall seal. Leave it to Ford, okay? They assist in reduction of engine oil consumption. So keep reading your questions now because you're going to run across something in a minute. They improve the life of the catalytic converter substrate to meet partial zero emission requirements for the full useful life of the vehicle. Now that right there, crankcase baffles and seals. That's your oil pan and your dipstick. Oh, that's really interesting, isn't it? All right, you got your dipstick seal revised, and so on and so forth. This is actually the Focus engine, basically is what it is, Focus engine.
The little 2.2 liter?
Yeah, a little 2.3 liter. The Duratec engine, it uses a spin-on oil filter cartridge. Nothing really mysterious about that. And you got, what's this black stuff on the side of that piston? And why is it there? Anybody know? Hey.
Teflon.
Alrighty then. Oh, I taped you another check in there. You know where I got it last time?
Yes.
All right. Make sure you put that on there. I mean, in other words, reflect that on there. You look like you're all tired and everything.
Silences.
Yeah.
Silences.
Okay. All right.
Is that sufficient?
I suppose. Okay. Yeah, I believe that's what I was after. All right. Okay. All right. Huh?
Is that nitrogen coated?
Actually, look at it. See what you see there. Now, we're not talking about that. I mean, the black stuff is graphite.
Oh, it's graphite?
Believe it, yeah, believe it or not. It's actually graphite. A lot of pistons have that on there. And that's actually makes it, it's sliding up and down in there. It's going to make it reduce the amount of the drag that the piston's got on cylinder walls. The piston ringland, you know what the ringlands are?
Yes, I'm doing a bunch of them.
What are they? The lands. That's in between the rings. See those little ridges? I mean, the rings go down in that little valley, and the land is like the mountain between the valleys, right? Okay. Now then, oh, wait a minute. Whoop, whoop. I see something here. Gas nitriding does what? Do we see something in there in one of your questions about gas nitriding? Can you see that? Brandon, are you being blocked by that board?
Gas nitriding was what happened in the catalytic converter to...
None of these.
No, you're thinking about an old TV show called Knight Rider, but we're not working about that. I'm just giving him a hard time. Look, no, this is basically something that gas nitriding does what? It increases the durability of the ring pack, that being the ring pack right there. There's your compression ring, number 1 and number 2, and then your oil control ring. Okay, here's your gaskets. Okay, everybody knows that. You got an oil separator gasket. Which one is that?
Oil separator gasket?
Yeah. It's got an oil separator on it. It's got to have a gasket. What is an oil separator for? What does it do?
There's pan.
Okay, let me hit you with this. On the side of that Escort engine out there that's on the engine stand, there is this stamped steel thing that the PCV tube comes off of. It's on the side of the block. And the PCV has to pull its vacuum, its air, through this thing. All right, now why does it do that? We don't want the PCV system sucking engine oil out of the crankcase, do we? So basically, if there's any oil vapor or anything in there, this oil separator, and you're going to see these, you know that silly thing that you've got to, there's all kinds of little baffles and stuff that keeps the PCV system from drinking the oil out of the crankcase. On the old Crown Victoria engines, that the ones that were fuel injected ones that started in '86 and ran for several years, they had, erase what I drew yesterday, Right, they had the PCV valve was going through a grommet right there, and then it was in a bore going down in there, and underneath that bore, going down to that bore, there was a screen. It fit in there pretty tight. It just had what looked like a bunch of wadded up wire inside of it, and it was like a metal shell and all that in there. What was there for you? It would get air out of the crankcase, but no oil could get past that screen. Well, the problem with that is that screen would get stopped up with sludge, and the PCV system would quit working. And if you ever had the engine run, it's right in the middle, in the back, behind the manifold. If you ever reached in there and you went to pull that PCV valve out of there, out of that grommet, and it sucked back down in there, you'd know this was clogged up. And I used to, so how would you get that out of there? It's way down in there. About that far. I took a screw and I brazed it to a big old screw, and I brazed it to the end of an old screwdriver, and I would screw that down in there, and I would yank it out. Then you get another one from the parts room, shove it down there with your thumb, and change those all along, We didn't know those things were in there for a while. Ford never told us about it. But anyway, the material comes in contact with hydrocarbons that minimizes evaporative emissions permeation. What's permeation?
Where it's
It means it can go through it.
penetrable.
Right? Yeah, it means if it's permeable, it can go through it, right? Okay, that allows us the seal. This is all for PZEV requirements. See, every little thing that they're supposedly doing is for that reason. Intake manifold seal with a preformed rubber seal and blah, blah, blah. Exhaust manifold is sealed with steel shim type multi-layer gasket. In the olden days, they used to have these things that would be machined really, really good, so that whenever they built it at a factory, they'd put the exhaust manifold against the head with no gasket, and it wouldn't leak. But in the field, when you had to pull it off, your gasket set always had a gasket in it because it was never perfect after you pulled it off one time. Okay, all EGR gases originate from cylinder number 4. Now, what are they talking about there?
Why does it all come? Oh, okay. Never mind.
Comes from cylinder number 4. It doesn't all go into cylinder number 4. It comes from it. All exhaust gas for exhaust gas recirculation all comes from cylinder number 4. Now, that's unusual.
Yeah.
But the fact is, you're pumping it. When it goes back into the mix, all of them are getting an equal amount of it. So it's coming from cylinder number 4 because it don't matter if it all comes from one place, as long as it's inert gas, right? So if that seal fails, the correct replacement component material has to be installed. A camshaft cover seal with a preformed rubber seal. If that fails, blah, that's so what? Big deal. Oil filler cap. That is an important deal. See that seal right there? Yeah. What's going to happen, guys, if that seal, let's say that I've got my 12-year-old son standing there next to me, if I had a 12-year-old son, and I hadn't had one for, 20 years or something. But anyway, if I had he pulls the O-ring off while I'm not looking, and he's playing with it like a rubber band, and he wanders off with it. Maybe it's my grandson or whatever. And then I put this back on there, and I'm driving it for a while, and now I notice that all of a sudden I got a check engine light.
The PCV system not working right now.
Yeah, the PCV system's working wonderfully, but it's pulling air in past where that O-ring used to be. And why is that causing my check engine light to come on? Put on your thinking cap. Huh?
You got a vacuum leak.
But how does my computer know that I got a vacuum leak?
I don't know that now.
Okay. So all of the air that's going into that engine should be going through what? The mass airflow sensor. So this air that's being pulled in by the PCV system past that O-ring is not going past the...
But how does it know to turn on check engine light?
Because the oxygen sensor is reporting a lean condition because the mass airflow doesn't know about this air, so it's not putting fuel in there to match up with that air. And downstream of the circumstances, the oxygen sensor is seeing lean.
Okay.
And so the computer says, I'm seeing a lean condition. I need to start ratcheting up my fuel trim to try to correct that. So short fuel trim goes up to 27, 28, 30, and then it says, this is not getting the job done. I'm going to start ratcheting up my course adjustment, which is my long fuel trim. Click, click, click. Finally, long fuel trim goes up to 27 or 28, and short fuel trim goes back to 0. And you might notice on this white truck that Archie and Sean are working on, when we did that full check with that Ease Diagnostics thing, we were seeing plus 20 long fuel trims on that. Now, your guys' job is when you get done, I want no coolant leaks, and I want fuel trims long fuel trims and short fuel trims to be on zero with closed loop fuel control over it. Everything. I want this to go smooth and by the numbers. You got that? No slip ups. The carpenter guy looks after us, and we don't want him to be thinking about his truck when he's working on something and hit his finger with a hammer or something. You know what I'm saying? All right. Let's go. Next page. All right. What is that right there? Valve stem seals. All right. The intake and valve stem seals are polished, and the intake seals are redesigned. That improves and increases the longevity of the valve stem to seal surfaces, and it supports high mileage oil economy requirements. We don't want to burn any off we get. It's a sharp edge lip design, and they are serviceable. You can put valve stem seals in this bad boy. Here's an oxygen sensor. All sensors that come in contact with hydrocarbons, crankcase exhaust will have upgraded seals and sealing surfaces. Is that good or what?
Oh, yeah.
Now there's your fuel line. The fuel rail, steel fuel line to tank. How many lines are there leading back to the tank on this one? Why? Well, there's not any leading back to the tank. There's just one leading up to
From the tank.
That was kind of a trick question. It was basically me fouling up there. All right. Now here we go. You got to, well, we know about all the fuel pump route, so on and so forth. Yeah, right. The vapor system.
Take it off.
Got a quick connect fitting. We got a purge buffer canister. All right. They're going to this is evaporative emissions. That's what we're talking about here. Now this is sort of like some emission stuff we're getting into. What is that right there?
Where?
That
Number
1 and 2.
1 and 2?
Yeah, what are they? That's on the bottom of the engine now. Hands off. Looking at it.
To some kind of pump or solenoid or something. Or
Looks to me like, what? Can anybody read these words up here? Balance shafts.
I did.
Now, why is it we need a balance shaft?
Balance shaft.
Huh?
How was that a balance shaft?
Because inside that is two shafts that whirl, and they're driven by a chain or a gear. That's just the way that thing works.
How
Now,
are you supposed to know that?
as it says it on the screen, balance shafts. But anytime you listen, guys, anytime you pull the pan off one and you see something that looks like this, General Motors had it on theirs. PT Cruisers have got that. The old, the quad 4 engine that doesn't have any spark plug wires. It's got that. You know that? You've worked on a quad 4 engine with no spark plug wires, where you got to pull a timing chain to replace a water pump. Don't worry, you will. I'll send a couple of those over this afternoon.
Okay, good.
All right.
I need some money.
You need. All right, there you go. Engine block. All right, it's the first Ford application of balance shafts in a transverse 4-cylinder engine. Now, one of the reasons when we didn't have balance shafts in the Ford Contour, you have how many times, like if you've got how many degrees is there in a full?
360.
No, 720. All of the cylinders are fired when the crankshaft is turned twice.
Oh, okay.
Right, and so how many firing events? How many degrees are there between firing events in a 4-cylinder line?
180 degrees.
180 degrees. So what's this thing doing? It's trying to jump up and down all the time. That's what it's doing, and you're going to feel that in an engine without a balance shaft. Well, that balance shaft, when the engine is trying to jump up, the balance shaft is pulling down. And when the engine is trying to go down, the balance shaft is throwing up. It's throwing it.
Engines I work on don't do that.
Yeah, you'll feel it whenever unless you got good soft motor mount. Matter of fact, there's a Toyota Camry that's just jiggling something awful. Let me hit you with this. What we used to have to do sometimes when we had one that had excessive vibration that you could feel a body boom or whatever through the body, we would loosen all the motor mounts, loosen the whole exhaust system up. I'm talking about loosening it where it all bolted together. And then we would sit in the car with our foot on the brake, and we would rock it back and forth and give it gas and let the engine move around and find where it wanted to be. And then we would tighten everything back down, and it would fix that. Because if you've got an exhaust system that's in a bind, and your motor mounts are bound up, it's going to transmit some of that vibration. And if you just let it find itself, loosen all the mounts, just loosen them all up. Don't take it off. Loosen the exhaust, loosen the mounts, throw it. You just let everything jiggle and wiggle around and find where it wants to be. That's what we had to do. We used to do that sometimes. Does that make sense? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
It doesn't cost much of anything to do that, so why not? Why not? All right, now what is that right there? What are we looking at? Thermostat. She can read that thing in the top. And besides that, you can look at it and tell. All right. 82 degrees Celsius. What's that in Fahrenheit?
180 degrees.
Wow, she figured that quick. All right.
She can read that
It's a conventional, and it replaced a 208-degree electric thermostat.
Electric thermostat.
Do you see that? Did you know there was an electric thermostat?
No.
You do now. A cooler running engine maintains comparatively higher engine oil viscosity. Now look at that. They've actually done a little trade-off. Most of the engines like to run a little over 200 for emissions, but they're wanting to maintain higher oil viscosity because that minimizes the volume of oil that get past the rings and the valve stem seals. See, you never would have thought that would even be an issue, did you?
Yeah.
They run a little cooler for that reason. All right, there's your engine mechanical stuff. You got an upper radiator hose. And what is this right here? They're coming off that upper radiator hose right there.
Looks like a pressure.
No, it's not pressure.
That's just a feeding coolant somewhere else, probably the throttle body or something.
Cooling fan number.
All right, cylinder head temperature sensors are main input for controlling the coolant fan. Now, you're going to keep it running for up to 3 minutes after the key's turned off if the engine temperature is greater than 100 degrees Celsius. What does that mean to me and you? Now, we don't know how the program is tapped, but those fans could come on with the key off.
Right.
Or could they? Is it programmed so that once the key's been shut off, if they're not on, maybe they won't come on? You don't want a great big surprise anyway, do you? Have your hand down there and the fan all of a sudden, boom, it fires up.
You like Tyler?
Yeah. Yeah, well, Tyler, never mind. I ain't gonna say. All right, so
Did it?
here we go. You got a new refill and purge procedure.
What Tyler want extra?
He wanted to wire up that board over there.
That's what he wanted to.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things he wanted to do. All right, you're going to fill the coolant system through the supply hose until the coolant starts to trickle from the engine. Anybody got that? Everybody good on that? You got that, right? You fill the coolant system through the supply hose. Now that's the heater hose. See that heater supply hose from the engine. Look at what you're filling it. Are you paying attention to what I'm saying?
You're filling the block up.
You're filling the block up by pouring it into the heater hose. Brandon, you got that? I like your new haircut, by the way. I do. I'm not just giving him a hard time. I like that haircut better than what
I probably needed to get a refund myself.
Yeah. Well, you need to get a haircut. What you need to do. All right. Yeah. So when you got out of the Army, you said you were going to get a haircut. You didn't have to, did you? All right. Now let's look at here. Reconnect the heater supply hose. You got this? Listen. All right. Private conversations. Make sure that the in-vehicle heater temperature control is in the hot position and the blower switch is off. Make sure the AC is switched off. Refill the expansion tank to the max mark with the engine switched off. Refer to the workshop manual for the complete refill and purge procedure. All right. Premium gold coolant. That's what goes in my pickup truck too. All right, here you go. Intake manifold. Now, what's wrong? What about this? What? Have you ever heard of the ELT design?
What?
ELT.
Equal length track. Now, what else can you think of that has an equal length?
Headers?
Bingo. Now, why do they do that?
More torque?
Well, so one engine won't have more exhaust, more back pressure than another. However, what are headers designed to do?
Okay.
Well, they're actually designed to extract the exhaust instead of having it push it out. Because you think about the headers, they're going way down there, and you got a collector, right? So all of the air that's coming out of the other cylinders is helping pull it out of the other ones. That's what you ever notice headers that they used to put on Volkswagen Bugs were called extractor exhaust.
Really?
That's what they call them. Yeah.
How does the other one help push it out?
Because if all right, I'm glad you asked that question.
Great question.
Remember, all right. Let me ask you this: if I take a bottle, and I've drawn this picture before, it's on a YouTube video somewhere. I got a piece of hose right here,
Stopping gas?
and notice a piece of hose sticking up like that in the air, right? All right, and then I'm going to take my rubber tip blower, and I'm going to blow past that. Let this air just blow past the end of that hose real strong. That's going to create low pressure down here, and it's going to mist a bunch of whatever's in this fluid out that hose. Because when I create low pressure right there, it's going to pull stuff. All right, now on your headers, this is a sort of a simplistic version of that. Your headers are coming out. You got one pipe, you got another pipe. Let's just start with the 2-cylinder. You got 2 pipes, and you got a collector down here that comes together. All right, this pipe right here is going to that. And while this one's pushing air out like that, it's creating a low pressure system that's causing this to just naturally want to suck it out. That's how headers work, and that makes it.
I didn't know that.
Now, on my pickup truck years ago, I bought that '74 Ford pickup for $2,000 in 1978.
How do you remember all this?
Because it came out of my wallet. Anyway, I bought that thing, and it got. And I've been driving a Volkswagen Squareback, and it was getting. And Ruth will remember these days. And it was. She's probably the only one in this room besides possibly Sean. I don't remember these days. And I've been used to what it cost to fill up my Volkswagen Squareback was what I was used to. And so I bought that truck, and I pretty well emptied my wallet. And I said, I got to wait till payday before I even gas this truck up. And it was just about slam out of gas. Well, I got paid, and I went over there to the gas station. And when I gassed that thing up, it took $6 to fill it up from empty. And I said, wow, man, how am I going to handle this? I'm not used to paying $6 for a tank of gas. This is terrible. Well, before the end of that year, thanks to Jimmy Carter, gas went up to $1 a gallon. And I was paying $20 for a tank of gas, not even blinking. You remember those days, don't you? All right, so anyway, the long and the short of it was, you know what the problem with that truck was? It had air conditioning on it. It had column shift, had 302, had 335 gears in the rear end, and it got 7 miles to the gallon.
Heck yeah.
7 miles to the gallon. Huh? Well, I'm not exactly sure, but I do know that the truck was running good, and I started doing things to try to fix it. And so I put headers on it. It's one of the things I put on it. Just laying in the grass out there at that trailer where I lived, I got me some headers, paid $100-something for them. And I popped them headers on there, and it gave me more power. But I didn't have. After I put the headers on, I took it to a muffler shop and had him put me the pipes on it. On that. But anyway, it had more power, but it didn't help the gas mileage not one iota.
Did it make it go down any though?
Didn't go down. It would stay about the same, but I had more power. And so somebody says, if you put a fine stainless steel screen under the carburetor, so it'll bust up the gas better. And on that particular carburetor, that particular carburetor was an EGR spacer. Because EGR was back here. And that EGR spacer provided some, when the throttle plate opened, they would fill some space down here. And so I got me 2 gaskets, and I pinched a piece of screen between there. When that's a piece of screen between there, I could drive that thing, and it gave me even more power, believe it or not. Because it busted up the gas finer. And that was the idea behind that. And I said, that'll help my gas mileage. It didn't do a doggone thing. I was doing all kinds of stuff trying to figure that mess out. So I kept worrying with it. And finally, I went to the junkyard, and I said, I need a rear end just like the chunk that's in this one, and the Rockwell chunk on that one would come out like a chunk me and you worked on. And I said, I need some road gear. I got 335s in this thing. I need to go up some. He said, well, I got one out of a Ranchero that's got 275s in it. And I said, well, let's go with those. And so I put that different chunk in there, and I gave him the old chunk, and that doubled my gas mileage.
You went from...
I went from 335s, which means 3.3 turns of the drive shaft, 1 turn of the wheels, to 2.75 turns of the drive shaft, 1 turn of the wheel, and it doubled my gas mileage from 7 to 14. Man, I was to cast me out then, Well, it's not the end of the story. I noticed that when the weather was cool, I would be heading from Sabine Pass up by the ship channel and going home from work, because you see them with big oil tankers out there, going by. And I noticed that the farther I drove, the more my truck would lose power. I mean, until I was all the way on the floor, barely going 50 miles an hour. And I said, what the Sam Hill's going on here? I never seen that do this before. And then I'd go up the Intercoastal Bridge, and I'd let off the gas. And when I coasted down the Intercoastal Bridge into the oil refinery, like I'd go right through the Gulf Oil Refinery to get back home, that son of a gun would have all its power back. And this was every single day. Exactly the same. And what are you going to do about something like that? You going to start spending money on it? I'm going to put this on there. I'm going to put that on there. I ain't going to do that. You know what I do? If it's my car, or if my wife puts pressure on me, I might fix her car a little, more aggressively. But I just drove that thing. And it hit me one day what was wrong with it. When I put the headers on there, I did away with the exhaust manifold and the stove It brings that little, it came up with the air cleaner, a little paper tube that comes with the air cleaner. I didn't have nowhere for that to go no more, so I just left it off. And the stove was gone too, because that stove was on a manifold that the tube hooked to. And then when I put that screen under the carburetor, it was really easy for that screen to freeze up. Gasoline will freeze. And so what happens, all the little holes in that screen started freezing up. And it was like letting off the gas, because couldn't be material there. But when I let off, and there wasn't no air going through there, it'd have time to melt all that gasoline ice out of there, and then I just kind of figured that out, So you know how I fixed that? I got me a piece of that paper hose, or that, foil hose that you use, and I ran it right down in there amongst all the pipes on that header, just kind of crammed it down in there, and it never gave it trouble again. Fixed it with a piece of paper hose. All right. Now, I only charge you no extra for that story, but it did take a lot more time and made it less late for work. And tell Sam he was a sorry dog for not showing up on my meeting last night. That was a trumped up story if I ever heard one. He said, well, I got to go play a hit tomorrow. And I guarantee you they said, when can you do this? And Sam says, well, I got something Monday night, but I can get out of it. This kind of stuff. And that's it. Give Sam a hard time about that. All right, ELT. The ELT design intake runners improve the sound quality of the air induction system. Now, I'm going to hit you with all these acronyms. Not acronyms, actually abbreviations. An acronym is supposed to spell a word. Okay, ELT is what? Equal length track. AIS is what? Air induction system. You going to remember that? Pop test Monday morning. Okay. All right. Now, what about the CM? What about the CV? I couldn't even say the letters. CMCV. All right. A charge motion control valve. What the thunder is that? It increases incoming air velocity at lower RPM, just like I showed you on that Mustang manifold last week. It's controlled via a vacuum sensor, and at idle is in a closed position and open when the engine speed reaches specified RPM and load. They've got those on those Mazda pickups like Gene drives. That 2003, have you seen them? Where? He's making it up. He's looking at his phone. What we do is Gene's truck has got a noisy sound. It sounds like a lifter or something. And you can unplug that hose, go into those charge motion control valves, and it stops doing that. And that just totally put his mind at ease. And he wouldn't ever think that's what that was. Variable induction system valve. Remember all these? VIS? Yeah. All right, what does that do? All right, it incorporates the VIS valve and is used to change effective runner length. Oh, wow, that's what they did on the SHO. Remember what the torque curve used to look like? What does it look like on a normal engine, on a dyno? You know, don't you?
Oh, really?
You ever dynoed any of your drift cars?
Well, the torque hits, it tops out at a certain RPM. And then
Tops out usually about 3,600 and then it goes down. Usually. Yeah, that's usually the way it works. I mean, on normal engines. All right, now on the SHO engine, when it hits 4,000, those variable intake system valves change the length of those runners, and it does this. It levels off and then it goes up again. So that's really strong. About 4,000 RPM, it feels like it jumped out from under you and went. And that's what this one does. And at idle, it's in a closed position and opens when change RPM reaches specified, so on and so forth. Back up. It says it can't be serviced separately, and if it's damaged, it's got to replace the intake manifold. Got that? Now, what is that right there? What's 2?
Can't see it.
Vacuum reservoir. Can't see it from here, but it's right built under there, isn't it? It's internal to the intake manifold. Wow. All right, now what do you have here? Electronic returnless fuel system. Can you remember what ERFS means? Yeah. What's VIS? What's ELT? Okay, let's go. There it is. Look here. You got a electronic returnless fuel system, and it's similar to the other ones that we've seen, like on the Crown Vic, and that kind of thing. Focus. The elimination of heated fuel being returned to the tank minimizes the volume of vaporized fuel in the gas tank, and the fuel tank is now made of steel.
I don't like that.
What, steel gas tank?
Yeah, it always rusts down.
Only if you keep running it empty all the time. Why does running it empty make any difference about the rest of that?
Moisture.
Condensation. All right.
You can always run a liner.
Yep. All right. So.
I line inside of gas tank, so.
That's it.
Yeah. All right. And Well, you know those Toyota gas tanks have got a bladder in them.
Yeah.
That's a strange thing. Unique pulse damper. What's a pulse damper for? You got any idea? Did you know that you can point out a pulse dampener to most people? It looks kind of like a fuel pressure regulator, but it's kind of off to the side, and it's just on one of the lines.
Don't it do the same thing? Basically.
No, what it does is, if you don't have a pulse dampener on there, you're going to hear all of this fuel injector activity bouncing the fuel lines against the floorboard. Click, 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 click. That's what that is supposed to stop you from hearing that fuel, that pulse dampener. What do you think? Every time the injectors operate, it pulses, and as it pulses, the fuel lines are going to go click, 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 click. And they're liable to be slapping against the car somewhere and just drive everybody up the wall. So you put a pulse dampener on there, it's got a little spring and a diaphragm. It's like jumping on a tambourine, whatever it is, trampoline. I guess I drink too much coffee. All right, you got a non-removable cover. Don't you remember I told you, and this is important, on the Lexus, on the left side, there is a fuel pulsation damper over there. At least I think that's what it is, and there's a fuel pressure regulator on the other side. But that one there's got a little screw in the middle of it. When you switch on the key, if that screw moves, it means you have enough fuel pressure to start the car. You don't even have to have a fuel pressure gauge. You just look at that screw, and if it moves, you got fuel pressure. If somebody's got a Lexus or it's a Toyota, Honda, some of them has got that on there. I can show it to you. And I went to the Toyota place and it pointed it out, and some yo-yos up there, they didn't even know about it. They're Toyota mechanics. And I pointed this thing, and some of them had been doing it a while. I said, look at that screw. I said, if that screw moves, you got fuel pressure. Said, yeah, it does. Watch. Turn it on, the screw went. I said, now kill the fuel pump. They kill the fuel pump, and it just sits there. I said, you can look at that thing and tell if your fuel pressure is your problem. All you got to do is have your naked eyeball. You know? That's the Toyota, the Lexus, and some Hondas, and all that. Just keep that in mind. You're going to know that now, ain't you? Ask Michael if he knows that.
Tell me about it.
Ask Michael if he knows it.
I'm pretty sure he does.
Huh?
Toyota thing.
Probably so. He may not.
I'm pretty sure he does.
Yeah. Listen, I've got this little pulsation damper, and right in the middle of it is a screw. What is that screw there for? Ask him the question.
Is it really there for the...
It's there for that purpose.
Oh, okay.
That's all it's there for. All right. I mean, if it's there for any other reason, I've never known. On them distributors, like on that, see that distributor right there on that Ford? This is going to blow you away. See that distributor on that Ford distributor, not the GM distributor, on that board down there.
Yeah.
If you stick an Allen wrench in that hole where that vacuum line goes, you're going to find an Allen screw down in there, and you can adjust that vacuum in advance.
Really?
Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Most people probably don't. Okay. All right. Now then, ask Michael if he knew that. All right. Well, he's too young to know that.
I don't know. He was 50.
Oh, come on. He's about the same age as my boy Matt. All right. Now, and Matt don't know it. So, unless I told him. I mean, I told Matt. Matt may know it. All right. Don't attempt to remove the cover because damage may occur. Have you ever seen damage occur? When's the most recent time you saw damage occur? The most recent time that you saw damage. Huh? And what happened yesterday?
Somebody tightened an already tightened bolt.
Yeah. Do you know why I don't really have such a hard time about that? You know why I'm not, one of the reasons I'm not giving Brandon a hard time about that? Brandon was trying to do a good job.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, I would rather him over tighten the bolt and break it than not give a rip if it was loose or not. He was thinking, I don't think this is tight enough. This is an important bolt, and I think I'm going to tighten it a little more. Yeah, it broke, and yeah, we got to wait for one. But the fact is, he was trying to do a good job. So because of that, he deserves a pat on the back. And what he was doing was he was applying the same amount of pressure he would to a regular solid bolt. See, and he wasn't thinking about it being hollow. But he was just thinking, well, I'm afraid that's not tight enough and I don't want it to leak. So that's really not a bad thing. Now, what I told Brandon, I said, I've got less of a problem with that than I do with the brake fluid going all over my... Because this was a silly mistake. It washed all of the ink off my paper, okay? All right. Okay, this right here, what is that piece right there I'm showing you? What are you seeing?
Electronic thing attached to what appears to be a fuel rail or something.
That's an injector.
Huh?
Ain't that an injector connector?
It's an injection pressure sensor. You see that at the bottom of the screen?
I say it was a sensor.
That's an IPS. Now remember, I'm going to give you a long test on all that. Okay?
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Is that what caused my 84 to die?
Oh, you mean whenever you were having the flash and check engine light
No,
on?
at 84, a long time ago.
Oh, no, it didn't have that on it. This is only on the newer
No,
cars.
this is a sensor though that caused it to just quit.
Yeah, that 84 model would probably.
It was.
Was it a Crown Victoria?
No, it was LTD. It cost $2 and something for that sensor.
Yeah.
But I don't know what it was. But anyway, they had an awful time finding it.
Yeah, I don't know what that would be. That's I was working on those cars back then too, but I'd have to keep that in mind. You know?
It was a mid-size, 302, whatever, you know.
Yeah. Well, I'll be doggone. That, unless it would be the air charge temperature sensor, but that would be more than $2. Unless it was a connector. Might have been a wire
It
connector.
was some kind of sensor, but I'm not sure what.
Yeah.
I've got the shop deal someplace.
Oh. Well, anyway, there's you got your fuel rail. Not equipped with a Schrader valve. Oh, is that a crummy deal or what? How are we going to be able to check the fuel pressure without a Schrader valve? This Crown Victoria out here ain't got a Schrader valve on it.
How we check?
We actually have to unhook the pressure line. We got to put one in there, a line that's got a fitting on it, tee it in there. You still got a line, you're still feeding your pressure in, but now you got something you can hook up to. In other words, you got to supply your own test port.
That sounds like a bunch of garbage.
It's only garbage if you don't have the stuff to do it with, but if you do have the stuff to do with, it's a non-event.
Another question I'm not supposed to ask, but does that thing you was talking about putting in that line, does it stay there? Or
No, you take it back out when you're through. Yeah, it's something that you don't do that. Everything okay, Wes?
Yep.
All right, then. He's not going to slap the taste out your mouth when you get home. All right, then. All right, now then.
Fire.
Engine block. All right, you guys finding any more question answers over here? Well, you better. That's all I got to say. We've only got 43 pages to go. All right.
Oh my God.
No, I'm kidding. FEAD components. What's FEAD?
That's that.
What are you looking at here, Wes? Come on.
Front end accessory drive.
All right. Now, number 7. What is number 7?
Generator.
Alternators.
All right. Generator. Why do we call it a generator? Look at this pulley. Oh, generator, one-way clutch.
Generator is if it's not controlled by the PCM.
If it is controlled by the PCM, it's called a generator. If it's not, it's called an alternator. Look at that pulley. Dodge has been putting those on there, and every now and then you'll find an alternator that's just as noisy as all get out, rattling and carrying on. That pulley is what's wrong with it. And you can change that pulley, and it's cheaper than buying a whole alternator. We've already changed them here. All right? So, what we got right here, catalytic converter shield, heater hose shield, generator cooling duct. Got all them heat shields on there. Tight packaging. Got to shield it from heat and road debris. All right, look at here. Air distribution and filtering. There's your air duct. Resonator. What's a resonator for?
Stop from going whoa.
And so it don't go whoo whenever you're giving it the gas. How many? We used to take our air cleaner and flip it over so that it was pulling air from all the way around instead of through that little snorkel, and then make it go whoo when you get on the gas. It sounded real smooth. And it was just weren't really supposed to be doing that. But anyway, air inlet's got a mushroom cap to prevent water debris and so on and so forth. That right there. All right, and so you got air cleaner element. What's that? What is that? Somebody tell me what that is.
It's a pressure thing.
No.
Electronic filter reminder?
It's not electronic, but it is a filter minder. If you see that thing change, the little thing pull down against the spring, you can push that thing and reset it. But that means your air filter stopped up. If you see one of those on a vehicle, like them Chevrolet pickups have got them, and you can check the air filter just by just glancing at it. As long as somebody hadn't pulled the air filter out and run it without one, you know what I mean? And you hopefully they hadn't done that. What is that right there?
It looks like a mass airflow sensor thing where it mounts into it.
No, it's something to do with the catalytic converter.
What do you think, Chelsea? What is it? Brandon?
Hydrocarbon trap.
Very good, Chelsea. She reads the label. Hydrocarbon on the top. There's a carbon grid of plastic housing between the air filter and the intake plenum hoses. It's got it captures evaporating unburned fuel from the engine and intake manifold. When you shut it down, you're going to see steam coming up out of the manifold. Right? They don't want to get back out into the air. So when it traps it, and so it draws those back in when you fire it up. Made of carbon, and it functions similar to a carbon canister. Now, if you see this and you know what it is, you're going to impress somebody. You know what I mean? It's between the air filter and the plenum hoses. All right, now what in the world is this? Oh, what's a dual mass flywheel? Remember,
2 pieces.
DMF. That's what it's going to be. I could give you guys a test on all of these acronyms on this one handout, and y'all would really have a good time. We're almost through with this thing. We only got 9 pages left.
It reduces
Huh? It's a dampening device for the vehicle when it's at idle. 6 and 8 cylinder engines have got a natural dampening effect on vibration due to the shape of the engine. Now they put one of these on them Power Strokes too, them 7.3s.
There's one on a G35.
Yep. So here you are giving this thing, and then when they come apart, you know what they do? They feel like a horrible misfire or something. They just shake you silly. And Mark Shipes was revving up a 7.3, trying to figure out. He thought it was skipping. He'd already replaced some injectors, all this kind of stuff, and so he's up there revving it up. And he's and he's paying attention to this thing and playing with it. He can go past a certain RPM and it'll quit, and he can come back and it'll shake again. He's just real confused and working on that. And I walked by the truck, and about the time he was letting off, and I went, boo! And he was, because he thought something blew something up, because he's scared of it anyway. The EMF system is supposed to isolate vibrations and prevent them from being transmitted to the passenger compartment. And sport luxury cars had that on it years ago. If it's not operating correctly, there's going to be gear noise and vibration at idle. It divides the mass of the flywheel into 2 sections. It's got little springs in there, kind of like a clutch. And as the power spikes occur, one section is allowed to rotate faster than the other, and energy from the power spike is stored in the spring between the sections. All right, right there you got exhaust manifold and shields. Now then, how many of you know that we've got oxygen sensors before and after the catalytic converter, right?
Yep.
Okay, now there's 2 catalytic converters on the car. One of them has got oxygen sensors on both sides of it. The other one does not. Actually, maybe 2 catalytic converters on each exhaust bank. Okay, so which one of the catalytic converters is the one that's got the oxygen sensors on both sides of it? Is it the front catalyst or the back catalyst? Which one is that? I mean, what do they call that catalyst?
Pre-cap.
Pre-cap.
What do they call it? Pre-cap?
Oh, well, you're thinking about the sensor, actually. But they call it, well, you probably were looking at the light-off cap, is what they call that. It starts the process. And the exhaust is super hot going back into the second cap. The first cap takes care of your oxides of nitrogen, breaking the oxygen and nitrogen apart. The second cap takes care of hydrocarbon and carbon monoxide. All right. But the first cap's the only one that's actually being monitored by those sensors. And I'll tell you something else that'll happen. Somebody comes out, PO420 code, catalyst efficiency monitor, and all this. And they say, well, we're going to have a catalyst for this thing. You know, of course, there's other issues here at work too. But typically, your catalyst is go, no go. You know, bam, catalyst. And what'll happen sometimes, those yo-yos, if you send it, like you send it up for warranty or whatever, these yo-yos will put the wrong catalyst on it. They put the one on there that's not monitored by the sensors, and then the problem comes back. You know, because then they say, oh no, they put the wrong cat on it. You know, stainless steel is durable, low thermal mass value. That's TMV. You remember that?
TMV.
Thermal mass value, right? All right. Hot gases pass. You should be used to that with your military experience. They do everything with abbreviation. They abbreviate every doggone thing.
It's pretty silly.
All right. Lower thermal mass allows exhaust heat to bring the catalytic converter to its proper operating temperature. That means it gets hot quicker. Doesn't take long to heat it up. That's the point. Secondary air ports welded to the manifold. What in the world is that for? What's a secondary air port? It minimizes pre-catalytic converter exhaust gases. In other words, exhaust gases that haven't gone into the catalyst yet from escape into the atmosphere. The welded joint seals better, and you got more durability. And there's your catalytic converter, and so on and so forth. Closer to the heat source. See that what happens? They put it right up there coming out. That's why. Listen to this. This is important. So many of these small 4-cylinder engines have got that cap right there at the. I mean, right there. It's about the size of a coffee can.
Right there as soon as it comes out?
Yeah, as soon as it comes out. They want it to get hot just as fast as it can. All right. All right. Throttle cable. Got that? Yeah, there you go. This is one of them. All right, there you go. Look at there. We're almost done. Right here. Larry got a throttle body. And I don't see no electric motor on there. That thing's just a plain old throttle body. Right. Idle accelerator transition. Driver controllability at lower opening throttle angle. Improves airflow. And it's visually different from previous designs. What does that mean?
Looks different.
Huh?
It looks different.
Bingo. He's a smart guy. Now, what is that? Up here, I see a question here. What's this for?
People.
What does it do?
Where's the question?
What is the purpose? Anytime you see one of these covers over the throttle, it's the snow shield.
A snow shield.
You know what it said?
Now, Archie, since you live farther south than we do, you probably won't have any. Yeah.
I did, so I didn't do yours.
All right.
Just me.
Now then. All right. That pretty well ends our handout. We don't need to look at that screen anymore. All right. Now let's talk about our answers. Okay. Did you guys get any answers out there, or were you not paying attention? Wes was getting his from his cell phone. How many did you not get?
I didn't get number 3.
I got.
4,
I
5.
need 6 more.
Number 3. Number 3 is D. Number 3 is D. That question is, to relieve fuel system pressure before service, you should pull the fuel pump fuse, start the engine, let it run until it stalls, crank the engine for at least 5 seconds.
There's 1, 2.
What's number 2?
2 is
Which
C.
one? Which number?
2.
Oh, I'm hearing conflicting numbers here. What?
2.
I'm
2.
saying 2.
Number 2, concerning the Focus engine described in the handout, which of the following is least true? A, all EGR gases originate from just one of the cylinders. B, the valve stem seals are a sharp-edge design. C, the dipstick tube is a permeable design. Or D, the piston rings are not chrome-plated.
You don't know I'm not going to print that. Send them my phone play race, did it?
That's D.
Yeah.
All right. Leave it to West to remove the rings. What?
The opposite about the dipstick tube and the thing, didn't it?
They talked about the dipstick tube. They talked about permeable seals, and all that
I
stuff.
thought it said it was impermeable or something.
Or no, whatever. All right, then. What about, who's missing another one?
Number 4.
Number 4. Okay, if the evaporative hose connector is damaged, you should replace the evaporative hose as an assembly. All right. Which one?
7.
That it? 7?
This C.
What?
Ain't it C? Or speed up the movement?
7 of interior effect does what? Speeds the movement of the air.
And then 10.
Anybody missing something else? Everybody got them all.
Number 10.
Number 10,
And B.
Maybe.
if the oil filler cap seal fails, you should. Oh, come on. That's going to be a B. Replace the oil filler cap seal. You can just get the plain old seal.
Do it.
Are you happy with that? You can get the seal by itself.
Oh, this is already.
Outstanding performance.
That's all it is.